Hey guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go to a pretty entertaining article titled, "He Cared About Me, So I Broke Up With Him." And a big shout out to Joseph for sending me this story. And guys, this article is all about a gal who writes in to share how she met this great guy. He cared about her, treated her well, all that. And because she wasn't getting the same type of butterflies and excitement from him that she's used to getting from the bad boys, she dumped him. Just like that. And that'd be a very good one to go over here. An actual article, not somebody writing in a story, an actual article from the New York Times. New York Times, I know, I didn't want to read it, but it's a good one. Backing up everything I talk about. How the gals will have a guy treat her well, like a human being, and they'll kick him to the curb for the guys that treat them like crap. And it goes to show, one, women are nuts, and two, the complaining about how there's no good men out there and where all the good men is nonsense, because there's plenty of good guys out there, but when they treat a gal well, like a human being, they get dumped. So of course many guys are just walking away or don't treat gals like very well because this is what they get. But also what happens when a gal, or anybody for that matter, when they're young, keep dating the same type of people that treat them like crap. They think they're not worth anything, so they actually meet a guy that treats them well, and sometimes not even kissing their butt, just like a human being, and they get bored and dump them for the type of guy that does the exact opposite. It's amazing. And this article here backs up all that, and you're going to see in the direction this whole thing goes. It'll be a very good one. Because it's one thing if it's people writing in stories or stories I find online, like on Reddit or something, but it's an actual article about somebody talking about their experiences. That's something else. Now, this article, normally I wouldn't give the New York Times the time of day for reasons you guys can imagine. However, our guy Joseph here, who gets me a lot of good content for Reddit, he actually saw this, subscribed for the 6-month deal, just so he could read this article, send it to me. So I appreciate that, so that's why I'm covering this article. So it starts off, he says here, when you're used to the roller coaster emotions of bad relationships, it can be hard to believe in anything else. Right there in the first sentence says it all. David said that he knew I was interested because of my body language. I turned to face him on the small wooden bench, tucking my feet under me and resting my arm on the backrest. He was carrying a backpack and talked about Stud's Turkle and asked if I wanted to borrow Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem. I think I can speak for all you guys saying, what the fuck is that? But okay. She's telling her little story here. He had misread my body language. However, I wasn't trying to show I was interested. The truth is, benches hurt my body, and turning to the side was the only way to make sitting there tolerable. Because of my illness, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a painful genetic connective tissue disorder, and dyssymptomia, which affects my ability to sit, stand, digest, and regulate temperature, many positions are either painful or impossible to sustain for more than a minute or two. Okay, so she has some issues here. Leaning straight back against the wooden slats with David, that day had nudged my ribs out of place and they ached. My bruised pelvis throbbed on the firm surface. For God's sakes, will you get to the fucking point, lady? You can tell a woman's writing this because of all the unnecessary details. Turning to the side allowed me to adjust my weight, blah, 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 on the meatier part of my bottom and to use my arm to prop myself away from the wood. This was 6 years ago in Berkeley, California. We know who we're dealing with here. Where I moved is temperate climate, which made living with my conditions more tolerable. It was cool outside and he was wearing layers. A t-shirt, flannel, sweater jacket, scarf, and hat. I had on a long wool cardigan over a t-shirt. Blah, 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 blah. When he saw my hands turning purple, he took off his scarf and wrapped it around my neck. I launched into a story about a scary incident on BART and interrupted myself to mention that the whole thing may have been my own fault because I sat on an inside seat, leaving the aisle seat open for harassers. He stopped me there. Whatever happened, he said, you were not to blame. I started the story as a city life is bananas, huh? Anecdote. But something shifted then. He already cared. He was paying attention. So what we have here, this guy meets this girl at the park on the bench, and they start talking, and he sees she's cold, so he offers her a scarf to warm her up. Being a nice gentlemanly type of thing, and already that'd be a turn off to her. And then she says he's actually asking questions about her, wanting to know about her. And again, she says he cared. He was already paying attention. So already these are traits that in her mind, well, the guys I really like don't normally do this, therefore I have to immediately lose attraction for this guy. How ridiculous is this? And you can see where this is going, but we're just getting started here. A few weeks later, as we shared fish tacos in Oakland, I told him about my disability, about the dizziness and nausea and the wheelchair in my trunk. He leaned in, memorizing every detail, and his eyes welled with tears. Smack! Dude, don't be a pussy. But already you can see. A month later after that, he dropped me at a music studio where I curl up on the leather sofa with my dear friend Natalie's dog and a room of one's own and listen to her band, Pamplemousse, recording an album. I had massaged my temple in the car, and he noticed. I said that I was out of ibuprofen, but it was just a little headache. When he picked me up, a bottle of water and a packet of Motrin was waiting in my seat. So he's taking care of her. They're seeing each other. He's very considerate, very caring, a good guy. Now watch how he's rewarded. And so for 4 months after we met, I broke up with him. He was standing outside a movie theater wearing his cardigan, backpack, and boat shoes. And I couldn't take it a minute longer. His earnest love had become repulsive to me. Imagining the way he wanted to care for me, the inevitable loyalty and acceptance and protection filled my throat with bile. You hear that? She's disgusted by him. This guy's treating her well, interested in her life, all that. Things that women all say they want. How many times you heard it, guys? I'm looking for a nice guy. A guy that cares about me and wants to know about me and is interested and does gestures and acts like a gentleman. And right here, this guy's doing all this. This is like right out what they all say they want. And right here, she was disgusted. My mouth felt, my throat filled with bile. Right there. And they wonder why so many guys turn into assholes. Treat girls like crap. And they say, and the complaints, there's no good men out there. Where are all the good men? Guys like this are good men. He's showing her kindness, affection, interest. And he's getting dumped. David is handsome and hilarious. Every new thing I learned about him impressed me more. His adamant humility belied his intellect and confidence. Kissing him felt natural, and our conversations were easy. Nevertheless, I broke it off. Why? Because this is not what she's attracted to. This is not what she's used to. She's used to guys treating her like dog shit. And by the guys treating her like dog shit, she then gets to get the butterflies from them wondering when they're going to call, if they will actually call back, where they are, who they're with, who they're doing, all these things. Nice guys don't give girls the unpredictability, the butterflies, all the excitement that the bad boys give them. She says, I contrasted the way I felt about David to the way I once had pined for men who had left me waiting. And I found the intensity of my passion for David lacking. The other men avoided talking about my disability. They showed up late. I hadn't yet figured out that the uncertainty is not the same thing as love. So right there. Women hate uncertainty, guys. I'll make that abundantly clear. I've said this countless times. I'll say it again. They hate uncertainty. However, they're drawn to it. They're drawn to the uncertainty. Isn't that fucked up? So when guys give them certainty, you know what happens in those stories when guys give them too much certainty. When the guys say, I'm always going to be here no matter what, or this, and this, they then start treating their guys like crap. Because no matter what, that guy isn't going anywhere. Women have to know that if they cross you, whatever that means, you're out of there. End of story. That you can't give them total certainty. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster for you guys, you relationship guys. For you guys that don't date anymore, you don't give a shit. This just backs up why you don't. She continues, the first day without David, I felt like I could finally take a breath. My friend Ellie and I drove along the windy Marin roads to Stinson Beach. Sometimes things aren't right, I said to her. On day 2, as I rested naked on a redwood platform in the backyard of the secret Berkeley hot tub house, doubt started creeping in. On the way home, I stopped at a yarn store. Of course, she does yarn projects. And picked up some fluffy gray wool that had been harvested from local sheep. I'd make a blanket while I worked out what to do. I used up the first spool and realized I would need a few more if the blanket were to be larger than a bandana. I bought 2 more, laughing to myself that I was well on my way to making a $90 blanket. I crocheted and thought about David. Probably because he didn't call you back after you dumped him. I considered texting him to let him know I was having doubts about my decision, but decided against it. My uncertainty wasn't his to manage, and the blanket was still too small. I bought yarn again and again and again. You know, we probably could have done her whole story in one fucking page because she has so many goddamn details here, but this is the New York Times and they get to put advertisements around all these things. But by the end of the week, I spent $390 on the blanket. Silly for a jobless person who lived in a married couple's spare room. Well, this sounds like a probably someone that lives in Berkeley's type of way of thinking. I folded it carefully and tied it with a ribbon and emailed David. Can we talk? There you go. She dumps the guy because he's boring, because he doesn't give her the butterflies, because he treats her like a human being. David disappears. Now she's having uncertainty. Can we talk? If I'm David, I'd say, F off, lady. He agreed to meet me by Lake Merritt. Smack to David. Okay, David, now you're going to talk. Maybe you'll go in the friend zone. Maybe she'll give you another chance. And it's only a matter of time before she pulls his shit again. We sat on a towel by the water a few blocks from his apartment. The handmade blanket rested on my lap, and I fidgeted with the loops, glancing up at David and backing down. My breath still catches when I picture his face then, hurt and certain and skeptical. He waited silently while I tried to put a sentence together. She said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I said. I should have had the conversation with you before breaking things off. You're right, he said. I'm afraid I made a mistake, I said, looking away. My words were jumbled as I tried to explain that when faced with the potential of a healthy relationship, my body and my mind panicked. See, guys? Right there. And you see how messed up she says she has all these physical issues, which aren't her fault, I might add, but it is what it is. And she meets a guy that cares about her, wants to be considerate, take care of her, and she's pushing his ass away. Maybe one can say fear of abandonment. That way then, like, she can always depend on herself and not fall in love with some guy that'll leave her. Who knows? But regardless, pushing away a good guy. That instead of feeling comforted by our little partnership, I felt disgusted and afraid. I said I was talking to my therapist. Of course, she is a therapist. About it, and I think it was because what he offered was unfamiliar. Until that point, my closest relationship had been marked by uncertainty and loss, and they felt perversely safe. Yeah. That's what she's used to. That's why a lot of guys, you gotta understand something. If you meet a gal, you dating relationship types, and she says all her previous relationships ended badly, that all her exes were toxic and abusive, which we tend to say anyway, and or things like I always managed to screw things up, run. Don't even waste your time with her. And check, please. Move on. Because that girl is always going to be damaged. You don't need a white knight for her. And we know what happens to white knights. They get eaten by the fucking fire-breathing dragon. They get fire breathed on them. They get burned alive. Then they get eaten by the dragon. And then the dragon shits them out and goes to the next white knight sucker. Don't be that guy. Because these types don't change. They may change temporarily in the short term. But in the end, they're still the same screwed up that they always were. He nodded, patient, and then explained that it made sense to him. Dude, David, really? He had listened to my stories of past relationships, and after I broke up with him, got a book from Dr. Firestone called The Fantasy Bond. He thought that I might be seeking to recreate the trauma and uncertainty from earlier years. Oh, for God's sakes. Dr. Firestone says that instead of questioning these circumstances, children blame themselves for their pain. Not only do they blame themselves, but they also begin to expect loss and loneliness. Faced with a new version of adulthood, my worldview had become threatened. Well, Dr. SSM says, basically, you're just so used to that. This is what you expect, and anything beyond that, you push away and screw up. David read the book to understand why I was breaking his heart, with no expectation that I would change my mind or that we would ever talk again. 6 years have passed since that conversation. The blanket now rests in our window seat, next to the binoculars that we use to watch the animals that wander through our backyard, foxes, ducks, geese, bunnies, and once a wolf. So they got back together, and David is still with her. Oh yeah, smack to David. It's only a matter of time, David, before she has another panic attack if she hasn't already, and went after the bad boys. 6 years have passed, blah, blah, blah. In the months after I gave him the blanket and we went to eat garlic fries, I'm surprised she didn't say avocado toast, I kept wanting to run away. Hear that? At therapy, I lamented that I wasn't experimenting an all-consuming obsession. I just felt warm and safe at home. It wasn't easy to fall for David, but eventually it became easy to stay. So regularly she's gone to a therapist saying that she has this urge to run for the hills because it's too good. Guys, it's happened to me. I've had girlfriends way back in the day when I was in my nice guy stage, because I'm a former nice guy. who saw reality, who girls told that I was the type they could marry. Ha ha ha. I was the type that every girl wanted to marry. Ha ha ha. And that I could do better or stuff like that. Or they're going to screw it up or whatever. Too good to be true. Me. So I've heard this bullshit before. David is kind to me every day. And I'm kind to him. We laugh often. We read one another's writing and talk late into the night. As the last years brought wildfires, hospitalizations, and the pandemic, our commitment to each other was not wavered. We are gentle and generous with each other. Well, good. David deserves this. I don't know if you do. Sometimes I look back longingly at my roller coaster romances with men who wouldn't call me back, men from whom I had to hide myself. Hear that? I look back longingly at the roller coaster romances with men who wouldn't call me back, men from whom I had to hide myself. The men that gave her the drama. Drama, drama, drama. Sounds like she's settling here. The biting words and fractured feelings. The elation of coming back together after breaking everything apart. We grow up believing that the world as we experience it is the most natural. Questioning our immediate experience is maladaptive when we are children, because if our life isn't safe, where can we go? As an adult, I sought out situations that would bring me back to my early years. Anything else felt too strange to be trusted. I've apologized to Dave for not allowing him the whirlwind early romance that he deserved. What the fuck are you talking about? He doesn't want that. So he didn't realize what he was getting into. Because of my angst, he missed out on the magical, hormone-fueled months that often mark the beginning of a relationship. Sometimes I still get the pang when someone mentions their floating early days of love, the headiness, the thrill, the bubble of invincibility, but there are other kinds of magic. So, as you can see, this is very New York Times the way this was written. And you can tell she lives in Berkeley and all that. I'm sure she spends money on avocado toast every day, money she doesn't have, and other stupid ass shit. But anyhow, right there, the point of the whole article was, and I thank Joseph for subscribing to the New York Times online for their little Black Friday deal to send me this article, backs up what I talk about all the time. Guys, when you act like the nice guy and all that, look what very likely can happen in varying degrees. Is every girl like her? Exactly like her? No, there's degrees of this shit. But the bottom line is this: don't be Mr. Super, super nice guy. You always put yourself first. You always check them on their bullshit, etc., etc. And you can find that balance. But at the end of the day, women can have guys treat them like dog shit. And so many of them are so used to it, when a guy actually treats them like a human being, they're disgusted. They're repulsed by this. You heard her talk about that. She felt sick. She felt bile in her throat as she said how this guy was. But eventually, she patched it up with him. Maybe because she was probably getting older, didn't want to be alone. I don't know. But she says she still laments about the old days and the bad boys giving her butterflies. And at the end of the day, when it comes to women, their feelings will always take over common sense and logic. Always. So that's something to be careful about. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day poor David is getting a Dear David letter. But who knows? I hope that doesn't happen to him, but don't. Guys, so when you date your relationship, guys, if you got a girl that tells you about her past or something like this, check please. Walk away. Save yourself the headaches and exhaustion. Otherwise, you can be dumped like David, or it can get worse. So I thought that'd be a good one to cover here for today on a Sunday. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if this is something you experienced. Did this ever happen to you when you're younger or now, where a girl broke up with you because basically, you were just treated like a human being? And she said, you're the type that every girl want to marry, or you're the type that every girl wants to this. But reality, she just wants all the drama that you are not bringing to her. Let's hear about it in the comment section, because again, it goes back to the complaint, where are all the good men? Are there no good men out there? There are plenty. And they're not kissing ass, they're just being decent guys, and look what happens to them. And that's why so many are walking away, or they turn into fucking assholes to girls, and then they complain about the guys that are a-holes. Guess what? A lot of times, guys that are a-holes are created by being hurt too many times. But that's a story for another day. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.